Most of us practice scale exercises, but a lot of that is just running up and down the scale, playing some diatonic thirds or diatonic triads, and is that really the best way to go about it? In this video, I'm going to go over how you can start working with scale exercises that are much closer to what you actually need when you're soloing. And this can really open up your playing and make you a lot more free when you're improvising, and it's going to be a lot easier to come up with and play great lines. My name is Larsen. Learn jazz, make music. Let's first look at a bebop line like this one. To me, there are two things that stand out about this line. We have the arpeggio on the D minor 7, and then also the octave displacement on the G7. Let's first just focus on that arpeggio and try to make that into an exercise. So what's happening here is that I have a D minor 7 chord, and on that I'm playing an F major 7 arpeggio. And I'm playing that not just as the basic arpeggio, but I'm actually playing it as a triplet with a leading note. And this is really a great way to get some more movement into your eighth note lines, to just change up the pace. And it also really helps emphasize that top note in a really nice way. So that's definitely something that's worthwhile turning into a scaled exercise. And you can do that like this. And if you practice this exercise, then it's going to be a lot easier to come up with lines like this one. Just a short side note here, this approach of turning vocabulary that you want to use in your solos into scale exercises is in fact something that I learned from Barry Harris in the first workshop that I ever attended with him. I was looking for a video where he's talking about this, but I couldn't find one. So if you know one, then please comment with a link here below. Let's have a look at another classic Bob phrase that you anyway want to know. This example is using what you could describe as octave displacement, where you take a part of a phrase, or in this case just a single note, and then move that an octave. And that's what I'm doing here with a C major 7 arpeggio. So we have this basic C major 7 arpeggio, and then I'm taking the root and moving that up an octave to get this phrase. And you might also know this as the honeysuckle rose lick. Since this phrase sounds great and it could actually work for any one octave arpeggio, then it makes sense to turn this into a scale exercise. And that will sound something like this. Of course, you want to practice scales to have an easier time playing the instrument, develop your technique, your tone and your precision. But at the same time, you also want to develop your ability to be more flexible on the instrument when you're improvising. And working with all these different exercises is really helping you work on taking a melody and then moving that through a scale. And that's something that's really useful when you're soloing. And when you work on this, I think it's more important that you focus on what you actually want to play in a solo than trying to come up with these systems that takes decades to get through. So really don't think about all combinations in all inversions,
in all positions, in all keys, on all string sets, in retrograde, different modes and scales and colors and all that stuff.
because we don't have time for that. This example is inspired by a George Benson line from his solo on Billy's Bounce, which I actually have a whole video on, so if you want to check that out, there's a link in the description. So what's interesting here is what's happening on the D minor 7 chord, and the entire line is actually made from a second inversion D minor triad with some approach notes. First this one, then this leading note, and then this one. To play something like this, you probably first want to check out your diatonic triads in second inversion through the scale. That would sound something like this. And if you know these, then you can try and take the entire phrase and move that through the scale. And that's what I'm doing here, but I'm stopping at the end of each phrase just to make it clear what's going on. As you can see, I'm not playing the entire position here, but this is really a great exercise if you want to dig into really knowing your positions and your diatonic triads because you're working with inversions, but also really applying chromatic approaches and passing notes to it and still having an overview of what is going on. I think actually when I play this, it is in part really a lot by ear as well, and that's also pretty good ear training because you have to hear what that melody is supposed to sound like and also what it sounds like when you're moving it up a step in the scale. Now that I'm editing this video, it just occurred to me that I guess we don't talk really a lot about adding chromaticism to your scale exercises and your arpeggios and all those kind of things, which maybe is a problem because it is definitely something you want to be really flexible with and really have in your playing and in your exercises. Do you work with this? Let me know in the comments. But of course you can also put this to use in a lick, and here I'm using it on a G7. You can use licks and stuff that you've transcribed to create exercises. That's definitely something you want to have as a part of your process. But if you want to check out some different scale exercises that immediately work really well as vocabulary as well, then check out this video where I'm going over 5 examples of scale exercises that immediately sound good in solos.